Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Seth Grove of the 196th District in York County. One of the top goals of the House Republican Caucus is getting government out of the way so that businesses can create jobs. On today's program, I've invited several guests for this roundtable discussion on what has been done legislatively to foster job growth and what still remains to be done. My guests today deal with this subject on a daily basis. Joining me are Kevin Shivers of the National Federation of Independent Business, Gene Barr of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, and David Taylor representing the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show and appreciate your time.
Thanks for the invitation.
Obviously, we just had the budget address from Governor Tom Corbett. One of the main policy documents we do every single year is pass a budget, hopefully on time and in balance. Obviously, we have a constitutional mandate to do that. How interested are your members, and how big is the budget every year for your organizations, and what does it set up for Pennsylvania in the future? Kevin, let's start with you.
I think it is a critical address for the small business owners that I represent. When you're running a business, one of the key factors in how you're able to grow your company is predictability and stability. And the governor, in his second straight budget, was emphatic that this was not going to be a budget where we just continue to spend in excess of the ability of taxpayers to be able to pay the bill. And for job creators, that's important. We're still in an economic recession. Many small employers especially are trying to do everything they can to keep their doors open, to grow their companies in this economic downturn. They're a little bit more optimistic because Governor Corbett and Republicans in the legislature are keeping a stranglehold on government growth, and we think that's important.
Great.
As Kevin said, this is absolutely critical for business, but it's not only critical for business. For anyone who believes fiscal discipline anytime, particularly this time, is important, this is, as Kevin said, the second straight year the governor has sent a very strong message to the people of Pennsylvania. We will not spend more than we have. He has made a conscious decision not to raise taxes, which is absolutely crucial. We already have the highest, with the country of Japan dropping their corporate tax rate. Pennsylvania is now the highest taxing authority in the world because the U.S. rate's the highest and Pennsylvania's is the highest effective tax rate. We have a personal income tax that was raised a few years ago. It is unfair to ask people to contribute more, so the governor's direction is solid. And I think anyone who strongly believes in fiscal discipline has to look at these last 2 years and congratulate the actions that this administration has taken and that you and your colleagues have taken to back up that effort.
Yeah, the state budget is the central event of the of state government in the course of any given year, and that Governor Corbett is to be applauded for doing what Pennsylvania families and households and businesses do all the time, which is that they bring down expenditures to meet revenues, that if you don't have the money, you don't go ahead and commit it. But in Harrisburg for far too long, that it's been all about, well, let's figure out first what we want to spend, and then we'll find a way to cobble together the money to cover that. And it's fundamentally unhealthy for state government to grow faster than the private economy, which has been our condition for many, many years. So, as was said, this is the second Corbett budget where we're spending less than the previous year. That's, to my knowledge, if it's ever happened before, it's been beyond the memory of anybody alive. But it's what we need. And after the many decades of overspending, we were never going to turn this around in 1 year. But if we can resolve to get this right, that not this year or next year, but in the very near future, that we're going to be in a much better competitive position. We're going to be able to get our fair share of the national recovery when it rolls around if we can fix the baseline cost of doing business in Pennsylvania right here, right now.
Terrific. David, let me start with you on this one. Your county has a lot of manufacturing. It's a blue-collar county. My father grew up in the mills, actually Caterpillar tractor. They obviously left. We have more and more manufacturers leaving our state to go to other states. Does the budget set forth last year and this year give business, especially in the manufacturing center, continuity to say we care and we want to keep you within Pennsylvania and bring more manufacturing jobs, create more jobs for those blue-collar workers that are out looking for jobs.
It does, and you're correct in noting that manufacturing really is the engine that drives our economy. Manufacturing in Pennsylvania is the largest contributor to gross state product, adds about $75 billion worth of value every year, directly employing about 575,000 Pennsylvanians. But those are just the jobs on the plant floor and the direct supervision of that activity. That manufacturing sustains many millions of additional jobs through supply chains, industrial services, distribution networks. And if we're going to put Pennsylvanians back to work, manufacturing is going to be at the heart of that pro-growth dynamic. Now, the budget, as proposed by Governor Corbett, does a couple of important things. First of all, that it does continue the phase-out of the capital stock and franchise tax. Just quickly let me explain why that's important. Pennsylvania is one of only a few states in the nation to have a business tax on both business income and business assets. That most states have one or the other, they don't have both. And so the capital stock and franchise tax is a property tax on business assets that firms pay whether they're profitable or not. And so getting rid of that extra level of taxation, because again, once that's gone, we're still faced, as my friend Gene Bark here said, the CNI is the highest rate in the world when you compare us to our competitor states and other countries around the globe. Committing to the phase out of the CSFT and finally getting it done is an important statement. When Tom Ridge put the CSFT on a path to extinction in 2000, the Commonwealth was to stop collecting it in January 1, 2009. So, we've already kicked that can down the road a couple of times. The current law says that the Commonwealth will stop collecting it January 1, 2014, and Tom Corbett means to make that happen. So good for him.
Yeah, great. Gene, let's go into just the general business climate here in Pennsylvania. Obviously, huge economic recession. It turned really the economy upside down. When we talk about tax policy and the importance of obviously continuing the phase out of the capital stock and franchise tax, we're looking at legislation upcoming to actually phase down the corporate net income tax. Part of that is quote, the Delaware loophole. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of go into what exactly people are talking about? Because I think there's a huge misconception with exactly what the loophole is.
Well, there is a huge misconception, and let's talk first off. First we talk a lot about what Pennsylvania doesn't have. Pennsylvania has a lot of huge assets because of our location, our natural resources, some of the educational facilities we have, and what we need to do on a daily basis is make sure that the negatives here in PA, such as the tax rates and so forth, don't outweigh those positives, and that's absolutely crucial. We've heard a lot from people who, to be honest, their goal is simply to raise taxes on business, to talk about this Delaware holding issue. Mm-hmm. The reality is it is a legal method that has been used for years to reduce a company's tax liability, much the same way that folks out there are utilizing the mortgage interest deduction to reduce their own personal liability. Now, the actuality is when you talk to people who are practicing that very little of this is used anymore. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that for years this Commonwealth, in terms of attempting to attract business and knowing they had a 9.99 corporate net income tax rate, actually encouraged companies coming here to go set up a Delaware holding company. We'll show you how to do it. So it's kind of funny now that folks are being demonized for that. There is one other thing that I wanted to mention on top of that, and again, when you hear people talk about Delaware holding, and mostly, to be honest, not Representative Reed, he's put forth a good faith attempt to deal with this, and his is not what's called combined reporting, which was attempted in last administration. But there is one other thing I think is important to talk about with Pennsylvania's business climate that is absolutely crucial, that ties in with manufacturing and everything else, which is what you and your folks did to try and bring some rationality to the Marcellus debate. Mm-hmm. It is Pennsylvania's key economic driver for the next few decades, I believe. It gives cheap energy source, a raw material source, and what this legislature did in terms of bringing additional environmental protections, a reasonable impact fee, and setting statewide standards was absolutely crucial, and is a key piece of moving forward along with a more rational, more competitive corporate tax structure.
Yeah, and great you hit on the Marcellus Shale. Procter & Gamble is obviously a huge international corporation sitting in northeastern Pennsylvania, correct? Mm-hmm. They actually drilled on site and they're firing their entire operations by their own natural gas, cutting down costs. Instead of looking to leave, they now have a huge economic boon to stay here. Tremendous jobs, obviously trucking industry, the whole 9 yards. So it's such a great opportunity, especially when you're talking about manufacturing. Large percent of manufacturers are utilizing natural gas as a source.
Absolutely, and the thing is that if we do it right, and we make Pennsylvania's overall business environment competitive and have a pro-growth, pro-development attitude in Harrisburg, that we can make use of the Marcellus Shale not just as a fuel source, but also across Pennsylvania, the way the gas comes out of the ground is different. Up in the northern tier, it comes out with very little byproduct. Out in the west, it comes out with a great deal of byproduct, and they call that the wet gas. And when you have the drilling where you have these other byproducts, things that can go into separate pipes and become essentially a separate product, a lot of those elements are actually raw materials themselves for certain manufacturing processes like plastics, like pharmaceuticals. And so along with the benefit of having abundant and available and affordable energy, which manufacturers consume a great deal of regardless of what you're making, for attracting the kinds of industries that would make use of these other byproducts from harvesting the natural gas, that has tremendous opportunity to be an engine of growth for the whole Commonwealth. So it's important that we again, we're going to demand that the industries abide by best practices, that DEP is going to be on the case to make sure that all of Pennsylvania's environmental laws are respected. But if we do this right, as Governor Corbett has said, this can be an engine of wealth creation for the Commonwealth for many decades to come.
Yeah. It's also a boom for small business.
Oh, yeah.
I was just having dinner recently with a small business owner from Pittsburgh who had the opportunity. We put together a meeting of small business owners at a drilling site in Wellsboro or up in Williamsport, and he was on his way back after taking a tour of the rig, and he noticed for the next 62 miles out of the city of Williamsport, there were supply chain businesses that had been established with piping, with other parts and materials to support this industry. And he got back to Pittsburgh, started doing some figuring. This fellow, he provides shelving and other types of inventory control materials for the manufacturing industry. He then developed a business plan, went out and reached out to these businesses. 30% of the growth that his business experienced last year was as a result of natural gas drilling in Pennsylvania. So it's significant to companies large and small across the state, and we need to do everything we can to embrace it. And again, remember, this is an industry that is here without the benefit of any tax credit. We weren't trying to attract them to Pennsylvania with government dollars to come locate here. This was an industry that is here to harvest a natural resource that's homegrown in Pennsylvania. We need to take advantage of it, and our economic future depends on it.
Yeah, we've seen a 29% decrease in natural gas prices in central Pennsylvania from all that domestic supply coming online. I have a nursery that is natural gas fired. Their costs have gone down, so they were able to give breaks to their customers and grow their businesses because of it. We're seeing peripheral industries in south central Pennsylvania and southeastern Pennsylvania, because the northern tier doesn't have obviously the business climate we do, getting contracts for all kinds of stuff dealing with Marcellus Shale. So it's a great opportunity for Pennsylvania to grow and prosper.
I'm actually hearing from small companies with small fleets of trucks who are looking to migrate, transition their diesel engines to natural gas consuming engines, similar to what you might have in buses, public transit, etc., because they want to take advantage of the lower cost of natural gas. And we hear about companies that are looking to establish fueling stations around the state to be able to supply those types of machinery and equipment. There's a real tremendous economic benefit here.
Yeah, great. Not to switch up, Marcellus Shale is obviously important, but we have a big issue to deal with in Pennsylvania, unemployment compensation. I'll throw this one over to Gene. You know this like the back of your hand. We owe the federal government billions of dollars, closing in on probably $4 billion. A little over $4 billion. We're paying out more than what we're actually getting from businesses and employees. We're paying out, we've spent more than California, or every state but California.
Yes.
So we have very lush benefits. We have a down economy, so obviously that's going to play a little bit of impact. It's a safety net to help people get through a tough time and get back to work. How are we doing on trying to solve that, and what more can we do?
Well, let's start with the caveat that our view is, from the business community, every person who truly deserves unemployment comp, who is unemployed through no fault of their own, should get unemployment compensation, without a doubt. Trouble is here in Pennsylvania, and you've referenced it, is that we have been fairly liberal with that, in that we have spent more on unemployment comp benefits than in the last 2 years in any state except California. We have the 10th or 11th highest unemployment compensation tax rate on employers, and every employee in this state also puts at least a little bit in to that fund. So everyone has a stake in this. We have real problems in that fund. The Obama administration identified $377 million a year lost in our UC system, just in PA, to fraud, waste, and overpayment. Wow. We have huge issues. Last year, this legislature, you and your colleagues took some very reasonable steps to try and limit, for example, we were the last state in the U.S. to require people on unemployment comp to look for a job. Yeah, common sense. We continue, albeit at a lesser amount, to pay people both a severance package as well as unemployment comp. And one of the things that got people's attention last year was when the former superintendent of Philadelphia school districts got an $900,000 severance package, then filed for unemployment comp. That gets your attention real quick. We have more that we need to do. Reasonable steps. For example, when someone commits willful misconduct, something wrong, violates employers' work rules, shows up drunk, shows up late regularly, people leave, still get unemployment comp. We have people who have voluntarily quit their jobs. We had a case where someone was living in Germany, had voluntarily left their job in Pennsylvania, and was collecting unemployment comp. These are things that we need to address from a state
That's the key.
System.
What is the purpose of the system? And as Gene said, the purpose of the system is to help people who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own as they actively seek work. And so the benefit is to be available to help people to return to work, and to help people who are in Pennsylvania and available for work here in the Commonwealth. So the kinds of steps that we need to address this massive systemic problem really are urgent. Even though they're small, they're common sense, they're reasonable, the political opposition from the other side is incredibly intense.
And the answer from the other side is, well, to cover this deficit, we just simply need to raise taxes on employers and raise the taxable wage base. And for many small employers, businesses generally, when you start raising those taxes, you make it more expensive to bring somebody on and hire them into your company. So you're going to have a negative effect of if you're going to be raising the cost of creating a job, then why are you going to be hiring somebody to fill a job? You're going to continue to operate with the same number of people that you currently employ. And Representative, I wanted to commend you. You have legislation that will tackle the issue of fraud. There was recently here in central Pennsylvania a story broke where inmates in jail are collecting unemployment benefits. Now, please tell me, how is somebody who is in jail able and available to work? But you have legislation that's going to address that, and that's something that our organization, I know the three business organizations collectively are seeking that passage, because I think helping somebody who's hurting, lost their job, trying to get back on their feet, that's what this system was intended to do. But if you're out on unemployment for 2 years, you can get an associate's degree in that amount of time. So there are plenty of other options available. We need to help do what we can to help people get back to work, and we need to prevent people who are in prison who are collecting unemployment benefits.
Unfortunately, those tax rates are starting to go up. Our members, of course, are contacting each of us because effective this past January, I think even the previous, the rates, because we've got to repay that huge debt to the federal government. So the fines, the penalties, the interest are going up. That has had a genuine impact. I had a call last week from a member who called the state that he had to write an additional $43,000 check for unemployment comp because of these fines and penalties. Those were dollars that he was looking to invest in a new business in central Pennsylvania. He opted and he decided, I can't afford to do it now. I'm paying unemployment comp. That is a real impact and a real drag on the economy.
Yeah. Now, federal law requires that after a certain time we need to so there's an automatic fee assessed
absolutely
per employee to start paying that back, which businesses are now
You begin
seeing.
to lose some federal tax credits. There's a huge hit to Pennsylvania's employers because of our inability to, one, solve this debt issue, which we have to do, and two, get us out of the problems that got us into the debt to start with. You know, the analogy is, it's great if you have a huge credit card debt, you go get a home equity loan, but you have to make sure that you correct the patterns that got you into that problem to start with. So this is the twofold approach to unemployment comp.
Yeah.
No, just to echo that, and again, to give the viewers some degree of perspective, Pennsylvania is the 6th most populous state. So if we were at the same rate as other states, we would have the 6th most expensive system. But we have the 2nd most expensive system. So it should alarm everyone that we're spending more money on this particular matter than Florida, than Texas, than New York, states much larger than us.
Yeah, great discussion. Hopefully we can get the votes needed to do some of these great reforms and start making that unemployment system work for those who need it, and start allowing businesses to rebuild themselves. I mean, it's just such an inhibitor. And I think people don't realize the simple economics of taxation. If businesses can't create jobs, people don't have jobs, so we can't collect income tax from them. If obviously we're not collecting income tax, people aren't working, they're not spending their money. So businesses aren't making a profit because people are spending their money, and we're not collecting money on sales tax. If we're not collecting those taxes, businesses aren't profiting, so we can't collect business taxes, and the entire cycle restarts itself. So
that's the virtuous cycle that that we're hoping to achieve with right-sizing state government by holding the line on spending, by allowing the private economy to grow. That hopefully, again, in the very near future, when the national economy recovers, that Pennsylvania will be in a much better position to capitalize on that upswing, and that, like you say, expanded growth will rising tide lifts all ships.
Great discussion, obviously, with unemployment compensation. There's one topic we've been trying to do for years, and that's our prevailing wage laws. We have a laws on the book. It was first Bacon Davis. It was actually Republicans who started it many, many years ago to protect northern construction workers from southern lower cost labor coming up and taking those jobs away from them. Fast forward it several years, actually every state in the union has a prevailing wage law where we pay people a higher price just because it's a public project. We look at our local governments. Direct cause of property tax increases is because we have to pay out more money to do building projects, school construction. You know, we have basically all new schools in York County, and the inflation of costs because we had to pay prevailing wage on those projects. We have local governments, boroughs, who are struggling with their tax base, and just to do a simple paving job or maintenance job are having to pay higher prices or pricing themselves out of being able to just do simple maintenance projects anymore. We have a bill, I wouldn't call it compromise. I wouldn't call it the greatest thing since sliced bread. All we're asking is for the threshold of $25,000 that was put into place back in the 1960s to be updated to current time, which is $185,000, which doesn't cover a lot of projects. I'm not sure you can get all new light bulbs in a school district for $185,000 anymore. How critical is this to the business community, to taxpayers? How critical is it to Pennsylvania to just get this simple update?
Well, you can't have a serious conversation about property tax reform without tackling prevailing wage and the increased costs that result to local governments and schools with every project that they're building. And there are actually two reforms that the business community has been working on in this session of the General Assembly. One is, again, to lift prevailing wage rules, those inflated costs on small projects, so that if a school district or a local government was building a shed, or maybe they were building a facility in the local park, that those small projects could be done at an affordable rate without any impact on taxpayer dollars. And in your area and across the state, taxpayers are clamoring because of the high cost of government services. So one of the ways that we can do that is by simply lifting the threshold on small projects that would not be subject to that wage. The other issue is coming up with a clear, consistent standard for job classifications, that if you're a plumber, this is what your job description is. If you're a carpenter, this is what your job description is. If you're a laborer, these are the things that you're able to do. I think all of your viewers understand that whenever they go to work every day, there are specific responsibilities and duties that they are involved with. That not only helps the worker, but it also ensures that the employer is able to compensate people for the work that they actually perform. The problem in our law, Representative, is that those definitions mean different things depending on where you live. So, for example, in the city of Philadelphia, the definition of a laborer is a laborer. Well, what does that mean? And what happens is companies wind up in situations where somebody may argue, well, you're not paying that person the proper wage. You call him a ditch digger, but really he is, a plumber or some other type of job. That results in a different wage scale, and then those employers get penalized because they aren't properly compensating that worker. What we want to do is come up with a fair, consistent, uniform set of rules that everybody knows what those job classifications are. Those are two modest reforms that just bring the prevailing wage law that was established in the 1960s into the modern day.
Yeah. Gene, opposition always says the only reason anybody wants to do this is so business makes more money and they'll just pocket the money themselves. Is that the case?
First, in this case, this simply is with the approach on prevailing wage, business is another taxpayer here, and you summarize it accurately. People shouldn't make more money simply because the taxpayer is paying for it. That's not right. This is a property tax surcharge. Taxpayers are paying hundreds of dollars more a year in their property taxes in order to perform the prevailing wage. There are projects built, and the other one you hear is, oh, they have to be safe. Every one of us lives in a home that was built not using prevailing wage. They're still standing. We go to them. We're safe in them. We feel comfortable in them. This is nothing but a red herring. This is a taxpayer issue above everything else.
Well, and the fundamental problem with this debate, with this issue, is that the prevailing wage is not the wage that prevails. I mean, if local governments and other public entities were paying, the average wage for the same work done in the local community, that would be a whole different thing. What we're talking about here is where every school district, every borough, every township, every county in Pennsylvania has to pay the Philadelphia union wage, and it's a jacked up, above market taxpayer ripoff. And when times are tough, our elected officials have to make the public taxpayer dollar go as far as possible, and modernizing this completely archaic, out-of-date system should be one of the top priorities.
Yeah, great. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Great conversation. We've hit so many topics, but there's so much more to do. I appreciate all your hard work on behalf of your business entities and striving to make Pennsylvania a better business-friendly state. So I appreciate working with you.
Thanks for your leadership and the invitation here.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Seth Grove. If you need assistance with any state government matter, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join me next time for a legislative report.